Thank you, everybody, and welcome to the Governance and Audit Committee meeting of Thursday, the 12th of October. It's 2 o'clock in the afternoon. This is a multi-location meeting, so some of us are in the Council chamber in Talbot and others are joining us via Microsoft Teams. First item on the agenda is Chairperson's announcements. I have no additional announcements to make other than the standard housekeeping matters, which obviously anybody who's attending the meeting should make sure their mobile phone is switched to silent. And please, can people raise their hands if they want to ask a question? I'm aware that one of our councillor colleague members may need to physically raise his hand, so myself and officers will keep an eye on matters. So the second item on the agenda is the question of declarations of interest, and I just want to know if anyone, having read the papers at this stage, needs to make any declarations.
I don't see any, Chair.
Obviously, those people attending, it may be that discussions lead to a declaration needing to be made partway through the meeting, but we can deal with that at the time. So the third matter on the agenda are the minutes of the previous meeting, and that's the meeting that took place in June. Obviously, we need to check them for accuracy and then approve them. So does anyone have any points they want to make on this document, which runs from pages 5 to 10? Any points anyone wants to raise? As there are no comments, could I please have a proposer and a seconder to approve?
I'll propose, Chair.
Thank you. Councillor Davis proposed and Councillor Carpenter to second. Thank you very much indeed, both. The next item on the agenda is one that Audit Wales are going to speak to, as well as local authority officers, and it's Q1 work programme and timetable, and it can be found on the agenda pack, pages 11 to 34. So Non Jenkins from Audit Wales, I believe you're going to address the matter, this set of papers first. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Pnawn da bawb. Nice to see you again. Hope everybody's well and keeping safe. And if you're not, that you're on the mend. So what you have in front of you here, as per usual, is our quarterly update, work programme update. I'm mindful that it's to the first quarter update, so to the end of June. So your second quarter will be coming to you soon. So that could hopefully, if you want to put it onto your next agenda, feel free to do so. But as you can see, I'll try and quickly update on a few things there. So the accounts audit for 22-23 are nearly finished, and the ICE 260 should be coming to your Governance and Audit Committee at the next meeting. So that's going, all the accounts work is on schedule in that sense. The performance audit work for 21-22 is now nearly complete. So we're pulling together all of the information and evidence for the springing forward. So that should be with you before Christmas. And the assurance and risk assessment for 22-23, we've done most of the work on that, but are finalising some of the reports. Again, I've been signing off quite a lot of reports recently, so you'll have a lot of those to come through. So in particular, the performance information report there. And Jeff is here today to take you through the wellbeing objectives report that we've issued already to you. The unscheduled care is nearing completion. It's being written up as we speak, as I understand. The digital thematic review, the report is drafted, has been to the council. We've had comments back and we're finalising that, so that should be with you soon too. The scrutiny review, we've cleared that internally, factual accuracy, and that should be with you in the next week. as a council. So we're as you can see, we're motoring now. And the 2023-24 work on the assurance and risk assessment is starting now, but it's an ongoing thing that we do throughout the year. And we're still to scope the thematic review for financial sustainability and the commissioning and contract management. And then I won't go through it all, but from pages 22 onwards is our national studies and reviews, and everything that we will be publishing or have published on our website. We'll be keeping this up to date in each of our quarterly updates, so that you've got kind of a repository or somewhere to go back to click on the link, and it'll take you to our website where that specific report is. So I leave it there. If anybody wants to ask any questions, happy for you to do so. And might I take this opportunity to introduce you to Alison Lewis, who is returning as the performance audit lead for Neath Talbot from Audit Wales, and she'll be leading on our work programme going forward. So you're likely to see Alison more often than me going forward. So just wanted to raise that and so that you could put a name to a face.
Hello, and I'd certainly like to welcome Alison to the meeting. Alison and I know each other outside these particular roles, so it will be a pleasure to welcome her to the Governance and Audit Committee meetings in Neath Talbot. Maybe before we, and I can see a flurry of hands coming up from members of the committee, but maybe before we come to those, we could ask Neath Talbot officers if there's anything they want to mention at this stage.
No, Chair, nothing to add. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right, I've no idea whose hand is up first, so Councillor Carpenter, over to you first.
Yeah, thank you, Chair. Can I refer to agenda item 4, page 11, where it says the update also includes progress on the planned work of Estin. Estin has obviously been in the news so much lately. I just wonder if we could have more detail on Estin and the progress report on it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you for that. Yes, in each of our quarterly reports, Estin and CIW also provide a generic update, and you will find that update on page 24 of the pack. So that's to the end of June. So that's what we have. Obviously, we will update this for the Q2, and we'll bring you up to date. You'll be able to see the up-to-date position when you get the Q2 work programme through.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. And next is Councillor Grimshaw.
Hi, I just want to check you can hear me because I am having problems with my speakers and everything.
You're extremely quiet.
Okay, let me just. I've got this really giant headset on. Does that help at all, or?
Yes, that's slightly better, but maybe you're going to need to keep your voice.
It's just quite bulky. You'll have to cope with the awful headset.
That's much better. Thank you.
There we go. So I just wanted to refer you to the table of reports that were in progress at the moment. In particular, the Ukrainian refugees report. So I was.
And which page is that on, Councillor?
Let me double check. It's.
Is it page 29?
It is, yes, page 29.
Thank you.
So apologies if this question is a bit late, but I've only just been added to this committee. I was just wondering whether that report was looking at the funding from Welsh Government, because I have a few concerns about making sure that we make the most out of this money. So does it look at how much funding from the Welsh Government has been received to support Ukrainian refugees in this financial year, and how much has been spent on covering the gap between those that can't find local authority accommodation and private accommodation?
That's a really good question, and one I can't answer, unfortunately, but I can give you, I'll send through the information in terms of the project to the officers if that would help. So yeah, a very good question though, so thank you for asking it.
No problem.
And maybe when the information is to hand, it can be sent to Democratic Services to be distributed to all the Governance and Audit Committee members. I think that would be really helpful. So thank you very much. Does that conclude your questions, Councillor Grimshaw?
It does on this, yeah, thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. And next, I believe we've got fellow lay member Andrew Bagley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair, and thanks, Non, for the update. I just got two quick questions, please. One was on page 16 of the pack. It refers to the 21-22 grant certification. Now I note there the housing benefits subsidy grant, that's partly complete. I'm just looking for any confirmation that there's no financial risk to the authority in terms of, I suppose, getting that grant signed off in a timely manner.
Thank you for that. Yes, I've asked for an update from Gillian, Gillian Gillett, our financial audit manager, who's unable to make this afternoon. I haven't had any update on that, but I can obviously ask her to give an update to the committee after today. I haven't heard anything to the contrary, but she can provide an update after today.
Okay, thanks. I mean, the main thing is I think the committee's aware if there is any sort of financial risk related to the late signing that grant. The second question I had was on page 21, which relates to the thematic review, financial sustainability. Now, obviously, that's quite topical at the moment with some of the sort of financial pressures. I've noted the timetable as to be confirmed. Is that possibly due to your resources, or is it sort of pushed back within the authority to getting that review done? I'm just conscious that we're going into Q3 now, October, and looking for confirmation of when that's going to be timetabled, please.
Yes, and thanks for that question. So, the thematics usually are scoped around about this time of year to be delivered during the next year, so from Q3 onwards. And the thematics are usually across all councils, so not just within one council. So it's not a delay from your part, and neither is it a delay from our part. It's just a matter of timing that we scope ahead of time and then we deliver at the end of the year. So that's to come in the same way as the commissioning and contract management is too. So, but it's being scoped as we speak.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much. And I can see also another fellow lay member, Mark Owen, you've got your hand up, Mark.
Good afternoon, thanks, Chair. Yeah, just a quick one on page 22. I think it's more my understanding of the formatting. The final column there, fieldwork planned at NPT Council. So just take the first one, building safety, for example, and it's got status reporting end of July 23, and we're now in October. So the way it's presented is was the fieldwork sort of undertaken, I'm assuming, during the timetabled work, because it's just at the end there, kind of says yes, interview not with nominated officer at the council. So just conscious it should be reported, I guess, end of July. So just from my understanding, it might be an obvious question or answer, but just want to be clear.
No, and thank you for that question. This is the update to the end of June. So we have published since then, we have published the report on building safety that's come out, and you will, as a council, will have received that. So the work has been completed already. Our Q2 work programme update, which was to the end of September, will come to you in the next few weeks, so that then you'll be able to see, and the link to that report will be in that Q2 work programme update.
Okay, right, that makes sense, thanks. And just on that one, on the building safety, and conscious, so that report's been issued. I think on the 8th of September, the council issued a statement about the reinforced autoclaved aerated concrete, or RAC, as everybody's familiar with. And I think they were still undergoing final inspections through September at that time, and we're now, I guess, 12th of October. And it may not be a question directly for you, but I've not seen any updates saying that they've been going through the rest of their buildings, but it's obviously pretty key concern for a lot of people. Do we have any update on that? Is anybody able to give any assurance around that, please?
I leave that to the officers to answer.
We don't have an update, Chair, but I can certainly speak to the Director of Environment and Regeneration, who will have been collating that information and provide lay member Owen with some assurance around that, Chair, and circulate for other members of the committee if required. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Does that answer your question, Mark?
Yes, thank you for this piece. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. I think the point that Mark Owen makes is extremely important, because obviously the report you're presenting to us from Audit Wales is prepared and for a certain quarter, and obviously we tend to be at least 1 or 1.5, if not 2 quarters further on by the time we're looking at it. But obviously that's a difficulty that we maybe can be briefed about in the introduction. But other than that, it is what it is, basically. So thank you very much. Councillor Carpenter, I can see you've got your hand raised. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is a question to Non, really. Thank you, Non, for your report today. How realistic are these deadlines that are being set?
For the local work, the national work,
Yeah.
or in general?
In general.
Oh, okay. Yeah, so we try and set the deadlines so that we are delivering in year. Some of the things will be going over, but we keep you up to date on that. Some of them we have to do in a certain time frame. The statutory stuff, especially some of the account stuff. But in terms of our work, obviously the pandemic and COVID has knocked everybody sideways, to be fair, and we have had some resourcing issues, as you know.
Yeah, that's why
in the team. Yes, but
yeah.
yes, and and thank you for raising that. But as you, when you see the Q2, you will see how much signing off of reports I've been doing recently. So a lot will be coming through to you as Governance and Audit Committee over the next few months, depending on how quickly the officers can turn around the organisational response forms. So there's quite a few things coming through to you now, and we're back on track in terms of resourcing. So thank you. Thank you for the question in terms of assurance.
It's concerning, Thank you.
Does anybody else have any further questions on that particular agenda item? I don't see any hands raised, in which case if we move on to agenda item 5, which again is Audit Wales to introduce the setting of wellbeing objectives documentation. These papers run from pages 35 to 56. Thank you, Non.
Thank you, Chair. I'll hand you over straight away to Jeff, who did the work and reported back to you, so he's the best person to take you through this. Thank you, Diolch.
And welcome, Jeff.
Yes, thanks very much for the opportunity to present the findings from this work. Before I start, it's probably worth just setting the context for it. So this piece of work is part of an ongoing sort of programme of work where the Auditor General has to assess the extent to which bodies have acted in accordance with the Sustainable Development Principle. There was a sort of overarching question that we needed to answer, which is included within the report, and that was, to what extent has the Council acted in accordance with the Sustainable Development Principle when setting its new wellbeing objectives? So it's a very sort of specific focus for this piece of work. The other thing I'd probably draw your attention to is in Appendix 1 of the report, we set out a sort of our approach to the work, and we include a set of positive indicators, so it's sort of illustrating what good would look like, and it actually sort of provides a sort of context for the work that we've undertaken. We didn't go through every single one of those indicators and assess you, but it provided a broad context for the work that we were undertaking. In terms of the status of the report, the report's been agreed in terms of factual accuracy with the Council, and so I guess the intention from today really is that we focus on the high-level messages and then quickly move to what the Council is doing to respond to the recommendations that came out of the report, and in particular what action is being taken to address them. So, Chair, can I assume that members have had the opportunity to read the report, so I can just sort of focus on the sort of high-level messages?
Yes, please carry on. I'm sure there will be some questions following from what you say, though, and obviously what people have read. Thank you.
Excellent. Thanks so much, Chair. So in terms of the overall conclusions that's set out on page 6 of the report, we concluded that the Council has applied the Sustainable Development Principle and carried out extensive engagement when setting its wellbeing objectives, but there will need to be further development in its monitoring arrangements. We can touch on some of that in a moment. So what I thought I'd do is just draw your attention to 2 or 3 examples, positive examples that sort of underpin why we came to that conclusion. So the first of those was, we found that the Council had sort of good understanding of future trends and needs. And in particular, we liked the fact that you'd thought about the longer term. So you'd set time aside and included in your corporate plan, actually, what good would look like over the longer term in 20 years. So we found that was, that was a useful exercise, and certainly a useful line in the sand in terms of what you were trying to achieve, over the longer term. So that was very helpful. As referenced in the overall conclusion, we felt that the way that you had engaged both internally and externally actually was, fairly extensive and effective, and that was that had really helped shape the wellbeing objectives that you arrived at. And the sort of third area in terms of sort of positive sort of findings was that we were pleased that actually the new wellbeing objectives each had a separate lead director responsible for those, so that would give that sort of accountability for delivering on the wellbeing objectives. The sort of flip side of that is we recognise that there are, the wellbeing objectives are sort of cross-cutting, and therefore, how you maintain a sort of an integrated approach to delivering on these with individual lead, directors will be, really important. So those are the sort of, I've only pulled out 3, but those are the sort of 3 sort of headline messages in terms of positive sort of conclusions. Clearly, there were a number of areas highlighted in the report where we felt improvement needs to be made, and where you were going to need to build on the progress that you're already making. And I guess by default, those areas for improvement, became the focus for the recommendations on page 10 of the report. So again, in summary, some of those areas for improvement were around understanding how and when sort of partners will support the delivery of wellbeing objectives. So we'd seen some evidence of where partners, there was an understanding of what partners' role was, but actually that wasn't particularly clearly articulated. I think our suggestion was, as service recovery plans are developed, some of that detail of the sort of how and when partners can really get involved in supporting the delivery of wellbeing objectives should be sort of articulated in those plans. Another area was I guess a better understanding of how you're using your resources to deliver on your wellbeing objectives. So this is sort of strengthening how the medium-term financial planning articulates how it supports wellbeing objectives, and that's not just in terms of listing them in the medium-term financial plan, but this is a real understanding of this is how we're aligning our resources to deliver these key priorities for us. And we felt that would be really important, because that would strengthen the sort of decision making around the focus on wellbeing objectives. And the final area, in terms of an area that sort of needed improving, was this the sort of arrangements for monitoring wellbeing objectives. And one particular area that we sort of highlighted was around the current suite of measures, metrics that are being used to determine progress on wellbeing objectives. Actually, more of those probably need to be sort of more outcome focused, and that's going to help you then, if they are more outcome focused, that's going to help you measure progress on the sort of more cost-cutting wellbeing objectives that you've got. So I know that was a very quick canter through. As I said, the areas for improvement there that I've highlighted sort of map into the recommendations on page 10 of the report. I was going to conclude there, Chair, in terms of my summary. Happy to take any questions, and then I think it's Karen from the Council who's going to provide an update on how the council are responding to the report's recommendations. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you very much indeed. Before I turn to Karen, I had a couple of questions, and maybe members will have a few questions as well. There's a reference on page 45 when the report talks about the use of data analytical software, and it says such as Power B1. Could you just explain what Power B1 is?
Sorry, it should be Power BI actually.
Oh, BI. Sorry, it's my interpretation of the typing. So, what is Power BI?
Yeah, that's effectively a piece of software which visualizes performance information. So it's a way of present. It's a piece of software that enables you to present performance information in a different way. And as I understand it, the council is considering using that. I don't think any final decision has been made on that. But maybe the officers, when in their response, maybe the officers can perhaps give an update on progress on that.
Thank you. And obviously, whilst you presented an excellent picture as far as work being carried out so far, you also said there were some areas to be strengthened. And one of the areas that I picked up is on page 46. There's reference to the service recovery plan, and in introducing that, the word "however" is used. So obviously, whilst you're on one hand saying things are excellent, you're then saying that, however, it's important that its service recovery plans are also fully reflect this consideration. So it's just careful interpretation of the use of language, basically. So does anybody else have any further questions before I ask officers to respond? I see no hands, so maybe Karen, if you don't mind. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. So if I can take members to page 56 of your papers. So there you'll see the organisational response form that's been completed. So this was presented to Cabinet back on the 20th of September and was approved by Cabinet. So on the left-hand side, you can see the recommendations that were made by Audit Wales following this piece of work. And then in the third column, you can see our response to each of those bullet points. So in terms of developing a clear understanding of when and how partners will support the delivery of our wellbeing objectives, we are currently revising the corporate plan for the next financial year, 2024 onwards. That revision is going to be informed by the output of the Let's Keep Talking campaign that concluded last weekend. So we are going to be revising the detail of the actions that sit under each of those wellbeing objectives, those 4 wellbeing objectives. So that will be a really good opportunity to address this recommendation so that we can look at then which partners can be involved in helping us and supporting us deliver those wellbeing objectives, as well as the when and the how they'll help us. In terms of the second bullet point, in terms of the medium-term financial plan, so as we say in the response column, we're continuing the process of developing a medium-term financial plan, and that's been done in parallel with the revision of our corporate plan for 2024 onwards. And then the final bullet point, the CPMF, which is the Corporate Performance Management Framework. We already recognise, I think, that we haven't got a basket of outcome measures in our corporate plan. So again, the revision will provide us with an opportunity to have a look at more of those outcome-based measures, sometimes referred to as population measures, that will help us measure the progress against the wellbeing objectives in terms of the overall impact we're making, rather than focusing on those measures that measure the service output, service delivery. We got that much more broader outlook. So, Chair, that's the organisational response form from the Council.
Do any other officers have anything to say?
Yeah, if I may, Chair, excuse me, just on your question about Power BI and the response. We have a new data team working now in the digital services department and a new head of data, and I know that they are keen on looking at Power BI And just for members' information, the BI bit stands for Business Intelligence. So it's a business intelligence software. So, and we are looking at it. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you. That makes much more sense than B1. So business intelligence is what we like. Thank you very much indeed for that response. I can see my colleague, lay member Andrew Bagley's hand is raised. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. It's not so much a question, but more of a statement, really. I found this to be quite a really good report. Thanks, Jeff, for a really good presentation. And I think what the report says is actually a good news story. So I think that needs to be noted in terms of it is a good news outcome. It's quite pleasing, I suppose, when you've got a small number of recommendations, but I suppose it's just not underestimating. There's quite a lot of work behind each of those recommendations as we take that forward. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Any other questions? No? In which case we will move on to the next agenda item, which is item 6. And this is the Register of Regulators reports and recommendations. And I believe, Karen, that's a matter you're going to... Louise, apologies, Louise. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. Just to draw members' attention to the 4 reports that are on 4 regulators' reports. So there was no update when we brought the regulators' report to you last quarter. There is no updates to follow from those reports. What have been included this quarter is 3 national reports. So 2 of which there are, and you can see on your spreadsheet that there's 2 reports from Audit Wales that have no recommendations, and 1 around building safety in Wales, which Mark Owen referred to just previously. So there are currently 8 recommendations against that report, 4 of which are for Welsh Government and 4 of which are for the local authority. So all 3 of these reports are passed on to officers, and we will bring back an update on each of these reports in the next Governance and Audit meeting. And lastly then, the 1 local report was around the setting of wellbeing objectives, which you've just heard from Jeff and Karen on. Thanks, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. Any questions from members? Right, we've got Councillor Oliver Stewart-Davis first.
Thank you, Chair. Just a 2-part question on page 58. I see the Springing Forward report. I see it states that the Neath Talbot report has not been received. Is this still the case? And second part, are we the only council to have not submitted a report?
I don't know who'd like to pick that up. Thank you.
I'm happy to take that if you want.
Yes, please. Thank you, Non.
Yes, no, you're not the only ones not to have received a report, but Jeff is working to finalise them this month. So we'll get them to you, as I said, by Christmas. So they'll be coming through thick and fast.
Thank you very much indeed. Next question is from lay member Andrew Bagley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I thought the annex on page 61, the spreadsheet, was really helpful. I just had 2 questions. One is on the spreadsheet, it talks about the number of accepted recommendations. I suppose my question is that in the covering paper, it might be useful just to draw out or provide the committee with assurance that actually there's no recommendations that weren't accepted. The focus is very much on the recommendations that have been accepted, but I'd be particularly interested if there were recommendations being made that weren't being taken forward. And the second part on the actual substance of the table, I struggle to sort of draw out from it if any of these actions were overdue. The table sort of refers to date presented for scrutiny, I suppose the target date for updates to the committee, etc. But I'm not getting a feeling if any of these actions are overdue, and that might be because it's been reported to other scrutiny committees, but I do think that the audit committee should have some sort of oversight if there are any that are overdue, and it might be there's not, but I think it would just be helpful to have that in terms of the covering paper going forward. Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know who wants to pick that up. Louise?
I'll pick it up. Thank you for the comments. We will note them and make the changes for the next meeting.
Thank you very much. And Councillor Peter Richards is next. Apologies, Councillor, you're on mute.
Okay, sorry about that, Chair.
No problem.
Right, okay. It's the recommendation 1 at the top of the page 61 with regards to the financial condition. In order to support the effective delivery of the accountability of the well-being, what are the financial implications? Partners will support the delivery of the well-being to ensure that the clear consideration of council resources to deliver the WBOs.
I don't know who wants to pick that up.
I think it will be Hugh. Is it Hugh?
Yep, thank you very much. I'll pick that up. So, yeah, so what we're saying there in terms of recommendation 1 is that when we consider the sort of next iteration, the medium-term financial plan, which will be coming forward in the sort of early winter, we will make sure that we consider the well-being objectives being set in the corporate plan, which will then feed from, as Karen mentioned, the output from the Let's Keep Talking campaign. So it's really around making sure we link our corporate planning with listening to what people tell us with our financial planning. So I hope that answers your question, Councillor Richards.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. I don't know if anyone else wants to ask any questions. I believe, Councillor Carpenter, you'd mentioned something at the top of page 61. Councillor Carpenter,
Sorry,
I
Chair, I
think it
can't
was
find
the use of the acronym on the table of MTFS, which I believe
it's
is
just
management, financial management.
it's just you know we are not tuned into some of these acronyms, and it helps us so much as members of this committee to know what they actually mean. So if I could have clarification, please.
Yeah, Chair, if I just pick that up, and apologies again, because this has been raised in other committee meetings as well, but MTFS stands for Medium Term Financial Strategy, Councillor Carpenter, but I'm sure officers will take on board that we will try and reduce the number of acronyms, because it's obviously, you know, difficult for members who don't live and breathe these things every day. So thank you.
Thank you. And obviously there are a number on that particular document, use of acronyms. So that really would assist the committee. Thank you very much. In which case, if there are no, I can see a message from Councillor Grimshaw saying, what is the F1I? Sorry, F1. And Councillor Grimshaw wants to ask that question.
Isn't that for the next agenda item, or was that under?
Sorry, Councillor.
That's okay.
in which case we'll move on to the next agenda item, which is the Compliments and Complaints Annual Report.
Thank you, Chair. So again, being presented to members today is the Compliments and Complaints Annual Report for 22-23. So just for you to note, for our Stage 1 complaints, we've had increase from 111 to 165, and 12 of these were upheld. For Stage 2 complaints, we've seen a decrease from 25 to 22. 3 of these were upheld. And positively, our compliments have increased from 249 to 326. So that's the report is for noting, Chair.
Thank you very much indeed. So, Councillor Grimshaw, if this is the agenda item that you wanted to raise that point, if you don't mind.
No, but I do have a relevant point under this report. I don't know whether you want to deal with mine, or I know Councillor Carpenter wants to ask a question as well.
Well, as you've got the floor, Councillor Grimshaw, you carry on. Thank you.
Okay. First of all, thank you for the report, and I'm particularly glad to see the amount of compliments that we get, because I deal a lot with the environment team, and I know that they're under a lot of pressure and they can be absolutely fantastic. One of the questions I wanted to ask, and this actually links back to before I was a councillor, I did an FOI quite some time ago about complaints for environment, and back then I was told that a lot of the complaints weren't counted because residents hadn't complained properly, so either they miscalled fly tipping, miscollection, or vice versa. Is there a way where we can make it easier for residents to understand the process, or whether, you know, if they do put, you know, complain for fly tipping that's not fly tipping, are we able to amend that for them? Is there something that we can do to help engage them in the process?
Thank you.
I'm happy to take this, Chair. I can reassure you, Councillor Grimshaw, there is a large piece of work being undertaken at the moment with our customer services team around complaints. So we are looking at how we can take members of the public's complaints forward far easier, and there will be more ways in which they can access our complaints procedure via emails, phones, etc. So this is underway.
Thank you. Will that be coming back to the committee, or is that a bit of work that's ongoing among officers?
Yeah, that will just be ongoing among officers.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councillor Carpenter.
Yes, thank you, Chair. A concern really as to how comprehensive our complaints procedure is in terms of noting. As a member of Environment Scrutiny, we were recently told that the only complaints that are noted officially are those that come through the call centre. As a local councillor, I'm sure other members would agree with me. Sometimes if you want something done quickly, particularly a fly tip or miscollection, you speak to the officer concerned and they will normally sort it out far quicker than the call centre. My concern is, are we losing complaints that we are not noting because they're slipping through that net? You know, it's just a general question about how far-reaching and comprehensive. Are we missing some complaints that are being unnoted because it's not coming through the call centre? Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Councillor Carpenter. That's definitely something we will note and take forward, and it'll be part of the review then to make sure that all avenues, wherever yourselves as members are reporting them directly to officers, that there will be a comprehensive system to record all complaints.
Thank you. Does that answer your question, Councillor Carpenter?
Yes, it does. I'm very grateful. I got a second part to that question, Chair, and it's this: we are not, as members, asked to take part in any sort of official login of complaints. I mean, I know they're passed on to officers, but sometimes it would be good, both from a complaints and a compliment side of things, if there was some way of checking with council members as well as to how these complaints and compliments filter through to us. Thank you.
Again, Councillor Carpenter, if it's okay, we can take that back with us, and it can form part of the review. So thank you again for your comments.
Thank you very much. And I can now see Councillor Peter Richards' hand raised.
Thank you, Chair. Just to follow on from Councillor Carpenter's question, on page 68, item 24, Local Government Election Wales Act 2021 gives the Governance Audit Committee defined assurance role around complaints and compliments. That was reported to the Cabinet on the 20th of September. Can I ask if there was any question raised in the Cabinet regarding that?
Thank you, Councillor Richards. Yes, there was 2 questions raised from Cabinet. One was around whether members' compliments were also included, which I can confirm they are. And the second was whether compliments are split against services and against staff. And that's not something we currently do. So when we receive a complaint, they're all logged together, irrespective of whether it's a member of staff or whether it's about a service.
Thank you.
Of that. Okay.
Chair.
Thank you very much. I've got one question, which also relates to page 68. There's reference there to a protocol, and it follows on from unreasonable, unacceptable customer behaviour. I'm just wondering how many people are currently subject to a protocol, and how long, once a protocol is in place, does it remain in place?
Chair, I can take that question. So there is just one protocol in place at the moment, and those protocols, that particular protocol will be reviewed in 6 months' time.
Thank you very much indeed. And no doubt whilst documents won't necessarily come back to us in due course, we will hear more about complaints and compliments. So, I can see my fellow lay member Andrew Bagley's hands raised. Andrew.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Just sort of digesting what's in this paper, and I noticed it does say the compliment and complaints policy in March 21 that was deemed compliant with the Ombudsman Wales. Who actually did that review? And I'm just wondering if this is probably an area that we might want internal audit to look at, maybe perhaps for next year, because obviously what we're focusing on here is the stats. But if the stats aren't potentially as complete and accurate as they should be, that might be worth consideration. I think the main question is, when was this area last looked at in terms of internal audit review? But I'm not expecting an answer today. Thank you.
So if I could answer that, Chair, what I can say is I can't remember it ever being done by internal audit. What I can say is that I will include it in next year's plan, if that answers your query.
Yeah,
excellent. Thank you.
I'm not saying it needs to be included, but I think it just needs to be considered within the overall risk assessment. Thank you.
Thank you for the point, Andrew. And lay member Mark Owen. Mark, you've got a question?
Yes, thanks. Just briefly, really off the back of this. I don't know if it's been looked at anywhere in here, but do we look at the root cause of these complaints? I mean, I noted that it says, I think in para 10, there's no systemic failings attributed to a particular service, but, bearing in mind the comment earlier about some of the complaints won't necessarily make it past the first stage, possibly on a technicality, for example, it probably would be useful to, if you haven't already done it, to be doing that, root cause analysis, and obviously probably ties into what my fellow layperson mentioned there about an audit, but it's something that might be management are in hand with. But yeah, looking at the root cause would probably be helpful for us to understand, the sort of trend in some of these issues as well, I think.
Again, thank you, Mark. We will note that for the review.
Okay, thanks.
Thank you very much, everybody. I think that concludes the questions for that particular agenda item, and obviously this report is for noting, so we formally note the report. Moving on, we've got the Treasury Management Monitoring Report for 2023-2024 at pages 71 to 78, and I believe that this is for you, Hugh. Thank you.
Yep, thank you very much, Chair. So if I just take members through this report very briefly and just draw out a couple of topical points, primarily in relation to page 73 of the report, where I refer to the fact that we undertook some very short-term borrowing at the end of March, beginning of April, in relation to sort of temporary cash flow issues, just to give members some reassurance that we have a team of people who deal with treasury management, investment and borrowing. We try and forecast when money's going to come in, money's going to come out. at the end of March, we had £53 million invested in various different counterparties. So we had plenty of financial resilience and money in the bank. It just so happened that the Welsh Government were late in paying us a specific grant at the end of March. So instead of calling those investments back, it was more beneficial to borrow some money off other local authorities. And this intra-local authority lending does take place throughout the financial year. But just to give members assurance that despite needing to borrow £14 million for a few days, we did actually have £53 million in the bank at that point in time. And you'll note from page 74 of the report that investments at the end of June, which is where this report is based. If you total all those up, they come to just over £60 million worth of investments, Chair. So just to give members an assurance of the council is financially resilient, and it's probably fairly topical based on what's going on in other parts of the UK at the moment. So thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And I do know that I think that was one of the points that certainly myself and colleagues were going to raise, because obviously it is a very important matter. And even if it is just short-term borrowing, it's just important to note the background to it. I can see a couple of hands raised, and Councillor Grimshaw, yours is first.
Thank you, Chair. Again, apologies for being new on the committee. I just wanted a super quick kind of explanation of what's meant by the F1 rated counterparty. I don't quite know what that means, I'm afraid.
And that's on page 74, isn't it, Councillor Grimshaw?
It is, apologies, sorry.
Yeah. So if I draw your attention to page 77 of the report, Councillor Grimshaw, that appendix details sort of the criteria we have to comply with in terms of our investment. So I mentioned that we had £53 million invested. Well, we have strict criteria where we can invest our money. So we use the Fitch credit rating agency. And as you can see, it talks about us only being able to invest in what's called F1 plus and F1 credit rated institutions. If I give you a definition of what F1 actually means, it means that it indicates the strongest capacity for timely payment of financial commitments. So basically, we only want to make sure the council's money is invested in institutions where we are guaranteed to get it back. So that's the answer to that, Chair. Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed. Does that answer your question, Councillor Grimshaw?
It does. That's helpful. Thank you.
Thank you. And Councillor Carpenter, and then Andrew Bagley. Thank you, Councillor Carpenter.
Thank you, Chair. I was going to ask a question about the 14 million short-term borrowing, but Hugh has more than satisfied my query. Thank you very much.
Thank you. And lay member Andrew Bagley.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. Hugh, on paragraph 8, where we've got the investments, I was just wondering, you've got there in the table that's supposed to start investment, the maturity date, etc. If the authority did want to move those before the maturity date, I'm assuming there's some sort of penalty. I'm just wondering if you might be able to talk on that, because I suppose the one that jumps out at me is Cambridgeshire, which got a 0.4 interest rate for 2 years. It feels like, we might want to sacrifice, take a short penalty of X months interest if we could get a better rate elsewhere. I'm just wondering how that is considered.
Yes, there would be a penalty. It would have to be in consultation with any of the institutions there. So you'll see, as you referenced, some of them are sort of fixed in terms of start date and end dates. There's £20.6 million you can see with the UK government, which is a sort of fixed overnight. So that's callable at any point in time. Yes, if you look, obviously back in 2021, interest rates were extremely low. If we wanted to invest with the government at that point in time, we'd actually have to pay them to take our money off us. It may be worth us having a conversation with Cambridgeshire, but I would imagine the penalty that they would apply actually wouldn't make it worthwhile for us. But yeah, that's the only sort of historic one that stands out like a sore thumb, Councillor Bagley. Not Councillor Bagley, lay member Bagley. Thank you.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. So this obviously report is for monitoring and for us to note. Does anyone else have any further questions? In which case, thank you. We note the report and move on to agenda item 9, which is the quarterly update report in respect of internal audit. And the documents can be found at pages 79 to 94. Thank you.
Thank you, Chair. This is the quarterly report up until September. We brought you last in June. It's just giving you an update of what's gone on with the internal audit service. In the last quarter, we've issued 16 reports. Details can be found in Appendix 1, with all bar one of these receiving an assurance rating of either substantial or reasonable. As we've got a new member on the committee, just want to confirm that these are the two highest ratings we can issue. Details of all the assurance categories can be found on page 89 of your pack. This one report, which is R24, was on procurement cards. This received a limited assurance. Limited assurance requires us to bring a response from the responsible chief officer, which can be found in Appendix 3 on page 94. This has come from the chief finance officer in this occasion. Since we last came to committee, we've been impacted by sickness quite substantially, and not only sickness, but we've also had a member of the team leave the authority. The combination of both of these does mean the delivery of the audit plan is going to be restricted. I've been discussing this with the audit manager, and she's been looking at ways to minimise the impact of this on the plan. And we will be bringing a revised plan to you at the January meeting. I'm not sure whether Anne-Marie would like to update on what she's been looking at, because she's been identifying ways we can mitigate the risk of this. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And obviously, the impact that staffing issues have had is a worrying development. Not one, obviously, that the audit team has faced to this extent in the past. And maybe Anne-Marie, if you wouldn't mind addressing what solutions you've been able to identify.
Okay, thank you, Chair. Well, in respect of the vacancy, that has gone out to advert. It went live today. The member of staff did leave some weeks ago, but because of the number of vacancies that were being advertised for auditors elsewhere in Wales, I took the decision to delay advertising our vacancy. So it is being advertised in line with the normal authority protocols. With regards to the number of days that we've lost in relation to sickness, it is quite substantial. It's 92 days. I have got no idea for how much longer 2 members of staff who are currently sick will continue to be unfit for work. What I can assure members is that the sickness is being managed in line with the authority's maximising attendance at work policy. In relation to what I can do to mitigate the risks of providing adequate coverage to be able to give an opinion at year end, members will be aware that they agreed the audit plan for this year at the meeting in March. On the plan, there was one audit in relation to accident reporting corporately, and another which we'd been asked to include, which was accident reporting in schools, and that was Chris Miller's Head of Education Development. Both of those audits, when they were scoped, roughly scoped, came out at 20 and 25 days, which is quite a hefty chunk out of our plan. One solution which I think is viable, and which I did discuss with the chair in briefing, is that in relation to the corporate audit of accident reporting, is that we add a test to every audit service going forward, where we will examine what accidents have been reported, if any, and if they have, has the policy been followed? If there haven't been any accidents, is the manager aware and able to evidence to us that they know what they're doing what they should do should an accident occur. Similarly, with our schools, as members are aware, we frequently audit schools, and my solution there again is that we add another test to the health and safety section of the audits when we audit schools, specifically around accident reporting within schools. By doing it that way, we will claw back some days, we'll claw back 45 days, and it will slightly increase the length of time that the other audits will take, but not significantly that it should make those audits overrun unless we find an issue, as could happen with any audit. When I discussed that with the chair at briefing, she was in agreement that whilst it's not ideal, given the position we find ourselves in, that prior to us bringing the revised plan in January, when I should have an idea of where I am staffing wise, that as an interim measure, you agree to that today with it to be formally approved in January. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you. And obviously, the officers had raised this with me a couple of days ago. On the face of it, it seems a very sensible interim position. And obviously, the conversations will be taking place within the schools and other parts of the organisation. And I think that between now and the end of this year and then into January, it is the appropriate thing to do. So I've agreed to the suggestion, but obviously subject to conversations and discussions today, because I think that I would welcome the opportunity to hear what members have to say, if anything. Any comments on that particular point? I can see Councillor Stuart Davis's hand and then lay member Andrew Bagley. Thank you.
Right. Thank you, Chair. It's not a question on what you just mentioned. Looking at page 87, carries on page 88, reference 24. I see that non-compliance of cards. What is the first form of contact for somebody who's non-compliant? Because the way I read the report, that everything seems to be done by email. I would have thought verbally would be the first protocol, with a follow-up email to make it as a reminder, because in the system, emails quite often get lost or not even read.
Thank you, Councillor Stewart. Sorry, Councillor Davis. The issue with being able to speak to people whilst I agree with you, it is better. With the working world as it is now, not everyone works 9 till 5. People have very different working days. Therefore, email, in our opinion, in this situation is the most appropriate. It also gives us the opportunity, whilst emailing the individual concerned, to copy their manager into the email, which gives an extra bit of oomph, if you like, to the message, because they realise that their manager is also aware of the issue that we have as an audit team. So that's our reasoning behind it being done by email. It also provides an evidence trail for us that we have identified the issue and followed it up.
Thank you very much.
Can I come back on that?
Yes, certainly.
Thank you for the explanation, Anne-Marie. When you send the emails, you always ask for a that has been read, the receipt, so you can see that if you look that you haven't had a response back, that the email's been read, you can send it again.
That's a very good point, Councillor Davis. I don't know if we do in these instances. I will find out, and if we don't, I will ask the team to make sure that in this type of instance, a read receipt is requested. Thank you for that.
It's just one click of a mouse, isn't it?
Yeah, that's right. It's just something I hadn't considered, so thank you for that.
Okay, thank you very much.
Thank you very much. So Andrew Bagley, your question, please.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I've got a couple actually. Just staying though on the GPC theme, I just wonder if we could have a couple of words in terms of the non-compliance. We're able to get a feel for the sort of examples of non-compliance that were identified, perhaps.
Yeah, certainly. The non-compliance is around the timescales in which the card users are updating the system to say, yes, the goods have been received, the invoice can now be paid. There's delays with that. There are then delays with the manager then going in to check, yeah, right, the goods have been received, someone's signed off to say they've been received, I can now go in and authorise it to be paid. Those are the main areas of non-conformance. And the biggest issue with that non-conformance is the knock-on effect that it has to, in particular, the finance teams, because it gives issues with, as you can imagine, with budget monitoring. It can also give us issues with how VAT is treated if things are not paid for in the correct period. So those are the main issues with non-conformance. There is no non-conformance. We've had no issues with the types of goods that are being bought or the levels of expenditure through the system. It is just the admin at the end, which is the whole point of the procurement cards, was to make things more efficient. And if the end part of the process isn't done, it negates all of the benefits from using the procurement card in the first place. Thank you.
Right. Thanks for that. That makes sense. I mean, I was wondering if it was non-compliance in terms of, I suppose, purchasing things which we just shouldn't be using a GPC card for. But I think that explanation sort of helps. That's good. My other comment really is throughout this section of the report, I know it does refer to recommendations made. I was wondering if we could be clear when we go forward. When we say recommendations, are they high priority recommendations? Are they medium? Are they low? I think having that distinction throughout this report would be helpful, just to be clear, you know, Internal Audit have made X high priority actions. These are sort of due dates, etc. So I think a bit more detail on that would be helpful. But moving on from GPC cards, I think we talked about resource. And I think for me anyway, it would be helpful when we have these sections of the audit plan to have the number of days associated with these planned audits, even if it is quite a high level. So we talk here about 92 days lost in sickness. I mean, if there was 4 low priority reviews that I could see on the plan that were 25 days, we could probably quite easily say, actually, the low priority, just don't do them. But at the moment, I don't have the visibility from the papers to hand in terms of what number of days have been built into the plan against each review. I think also you refer to coming back to the January committee. It just feels a little bit late. So I'm assuming if there's going to be some sort of proposals to drop, amend certain reviews, I'm assuming that would go through the chair as correspondence. But I certainly agree with what the chair's agreed in the interim. Seems to be a sensible way forward. Thank you.
Thank you for that. I take on board your comments with regards to the recommendations, and I will get this area of the report revised going forward. I appreciate that January does seem quite some way away. It's just the committee cycle. And if I were to have brought a revised plan to this meeting, you know, and everyone comes back to work on Monday, you know, that it is more just a timing issue. I accept what you say about the audits where they have a low risk rating, and you're quite right, those will be the ones which will have to come out of the plan in January. What I will say is that even with us having lost that number of days, we have still produced 16 formal reports in the last quarter, and I don't want it all to be, you know, a negative story, because I think that having produced that number of reports, together with all of the other work that we've done, that for the team who have been, the members of the team who have been in work, I think they're to be commended for that.
No, I think that's right. And I think with a little bit more detail, I think that'll come through in terms of the reports, because for me, I am thinking we're 6 months through the year. Can I put my finger on and say we're 6 months through the plan, despite sickness, absence or not? I don't think we've got that level of detail there, because obviously the numbers aren't associated with some of the reviews, but I totally agree with everything you're saying. I think the team need to be commended in terms of what they have produced with the number of vacancies. And I think you raise a good point now about the sort of January being slightly too late. I think the meeting is at the end of January. I suppose it's just covering ourselves that, you know, making sure that you have the approval from the chair to make any amendments, because obviously you might make some plans and then January, actually the committee might not agree with you. So just sort of covering that base off. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that question, and obviously also thank you for indicating that you were in approval of the suggestion that Anne-Marie was making, and that I had indicated I was going to agree to. Lay member Mark Owen, I can see your hands raised.
Oh yes, sorry, all of that makes sense, and I think I concur with what Andrew just said. So I missed a few minutes back there in Anne-Marie's introduction, as I had to take a personal call, so apologies for that. Just so if I offering my apologies in case I asked something that was already stated earlier. On the people that are absent, how many sort of full-time auditors does that leave at the moment then? Sorry, can you hear me?
Yeah, sorry,
we can.
I'm going round the room in my head to see who sits where. Sorry. It leaves 4 full-time auditors.
Okay, fine. Yeah. So, I mean, I'm not suggesting you do this in future. I mean, one of my past roles, the chair required me to kind of give a view on the levels of resource in the team, and you know, just sort of. And to be honest with you, I always used to think it wasn't particularly relevant, and you know, it's just to say, oh, there's no real change. And I probably was more fortunate than you've been with some of your absence. But when you do have 3 people off, and if you've got 5 or 6 in the team, then obviously that's 50%. So it's something maybe just a little bit of extra detail, but that's fine. Is there, you know, appreciate this is a bit of a well, it's not really a crystal ball question, but is there a plan in the interim then, if you've not got an idea when some of the absentees are due to return to work, and to Andrew's point about January not being far away, should those people remain absent, is it just a case of reducing the days in the plan as has been discussed, or do you have a possible contractor option? Is that not something that you typically explore?
Happy to take that. In the past, we have bought in services. In my opinion, for the money we paid, the output wasn't worth it. And I have to say it's not something that I would support going forward. However, I'm happy to be overruled by you as a Section 151 officer. But I do have, the only other option I have to increase the amount of audit days that I have is, and this again would be based on the goodwill of the staff, would be funding some overtime, which is something that I am considering.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's obviously entirely your decision. I guess the point is, without visibility of what priority, and again, coming back to that prioritization on the audits left in the plan, you know, if there are a significant number of audits that we would really, you know, benefit from and obviously getting really high value out of, there's may not be many candidates you want to sort of knock off the list, but obviously conscious that is a trade-off. But yeah, obviously I'll leave that with you. But I do take the point that the quality of third-party resource can sometimes vary depending on where you go to. But yeah, obviously it's a decision for you how you balance that. I had a couple of questions just on some of the other tabular details. I think it's page 85 and the Chief Finance Officer Creditors Report, which I think's got reasonable assurance. It is more question really. You know, as part of your testing, do you cover kind of I know some of these manifest this way anyway, but in the fraud related controls? So it touches partly on the analytics point, I think, that was raised earlier, because, you know, in my experience, Power BI is more of a visualization tool rather than something that allows you to do kind of deep dive data analytics. So I know I heard that the team are considering Power BI, but in terms of actually, you know, being able to fully test the population of data, you know, and as we go now with things like duplicate invoices, pay addresses changing, analytics is very powerful in that area. Is that something you guys are looking at as well? So I guess there's two elements to it: the fraud aspect, which obviously will get covered by some of the testing you do, but to the extent you can then leverage analytics and whether that's being considered for fairly routine areas of the balance sheet like this, you know.
In relation to the testing that we undertook in respect of this audit, then yes, the normal audit testing around fraud was undertaken. In relation to the use of any analytical tools, we do use the idea package when applicable. We obviously are interested in, as the authority becomes more proficient, if you like, in the use of new types of software, then certainly we will be at the front of the queue if there is anything that can help give us a better insight into what the data is showing us. Then certainly we will use anything and everything that becomes available.
Okay, that's great. And the last one from me, which is page 87, where we've got the duplicate creditor invoice payments. And again, it was more around whether any root cause analysis had been done. I mean, I think if I'm reading it correctly, there's over 500,000 duplicate and incorrect creditor invoice payments, which, you know, is 18 of them, so they're sizable. But again, it's good to see they were identified, I think, by the internal reconciliations. But in terms of eradicating those from future performance, I guess, have we looked at those and sort of learned the lessons, I guess?
Yeah, I think it's a work in progress, and always will be. You can have the best processes in the world, but you cannot, you can't screen out human error. And the 8 true duplicate payments which hadn't been picked up, I think for an organisation this size, paying the number of invoices that we do, that I'm satisfied that the controls that we have in place are operating as well as we can expect. Yes, I would love to have been able to come and say the controls were absolute and there were none, but I don't think we'll ever get to that stage.
So are we saying the majority of these are human error then, is it? So that's what I'm trying to get at really, is what's the driver for some of these?
Yeah,
yeah,
it was. And I think initially part of the issue was the change in working practices as people adapted to working differently, working from home as opposed to working in the office, and instead of having a physical invoice, it was a digital invoice. So lessons have been learned, controls have been adapted to take account of the new working environment.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. And I think it's worth noting that obviously the 8 duplicate reference payments that you've just referred to relate to a relatively small amount of money, and refunds are being sought. The 18 duplicate sums which relate to a significantly larger amount of money, obviously the refunds have already been received. So thank you. Obviously, this report was for information and therefore noting, and given the comments that have been raised, I'm happy to confirm that I have agreed and continue to agree to the clawback of the 45 days that Anne-Marie has requested. And obviously, this matter will be one that she and I will continue to keep an eye on, and obviously will come back to us in the January meeting. I note we've got a meeting in November, but that's specifically for other matters. But if needs be, obviously it can be raised at that point as well. So thank you very much. If there are no further questions, we'll move on to agenda item 10, which is again for internal audit and relates to external assessments update. Thank you, officers.
Thank you, Chair. This is the External Public Sector Internal Audit Standards Assessors Report on the Internal Audit Service. It's undertaken every 5 years by an external party. This year, ours was undertaken by Conwy County Borough Council. I'm happy to report that the overall assessment we've received is that we generally conform. I'd like members to note that this is the highest assessment that is achievable under the standards. The full report from Conwy can be found in Appendix 1. If anybody's got any questions, then happy to take any.
Does anybody have any questions? I'd noted as I was reading this that there was an acronym in there that I had to go back and check. But again, we've already covered that point earlier in the meeting. And obviously, this is an excellent report. And obviously, as the head of internal audit has mentioned, the rating is actually the highest that could be achieved. So it's an excellent reflection of the work done by the officers, and the people involved in doing the work need to be commended. So thank you from me. Andrew Bagley, I can see your hand is raised. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks, Chair. I think you made my point in terms of it is an excellent report, really good outcome. The bit I did want to query in terms of the head of internal audit of responsibility for the accountancy team, that struck me as slightly odd. I'm wondering if we could talk around that, why that is the case. I know we've got the safeguards, but I suppose my question is, what are those safeguards? And B, is this a sort of standard arrangement across other councils?
Take this, Chair. The reason that I've got responsibility for the accountancy services, and it isn't the full accountancy services, it's not the budgeting side of things and financial planning, it is for the statement of accounts. Insurance comes under me. The head of internal audit has to be a qualified accountant. The audit manager or IIA, the audit manager isn't, but by experience has the necessary qualifications, but on paper doesn't. So between ourselves, we work together on this. It is standard practice. If you look at the report from Conwy, they are head of purchasing as well. So it is more and more seen more and more across the authorities now that they do have some other responsibilities. The internal controls are that any of the reports issued that Anne-Marie issues, I don't have any input into anything that has my responsibilities. So the first I would see would be the same as any other manager for the agreement of the draft, but no, so I wouldn't have any input into the scoping of the work or anything like that. So I think the controls are covered that way. Thank you, Chair.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that Councillor Meisen, who's no longer with us, had raised a question previously, and it may be that it's already been covered. So his question was, what does the report say for Neath Talbot audit services?
I'm happy to take that, Chair. Basically, what the report is saying is that as a service, there are no issues in relation to how we plan and perform our audits, how we address our findings, how we come to our recommendations, how we assess risk within the authority. So our day-to-day job, if you like, there are no issues in relation to, for example, our due professional care, our impartiality, our independence, how we communicate with our stakeholders. The recommendations that are made are in relation, in the main, in relation to our, oh gosh, what's it called? Our, sorry, internal audit charter. I had a complete brain freeze. Our internal audit charter, and whilst I am content that our internal audit charter is fit for purpose, I'm not saying it's perfect, and our external assessor picked up on that and has made recommendations to enhance the charter that we have, which we will take on board and present to members next year with our annual report, a revised charter for members' approval. So I think if the message I would like members to take from this external assessment is that there are no concerns in relation to how we as an internal audit section are performing. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you very much. And certainly, having been on this committee for a long time and in detailed conversation with officers, I'm definitely fully aware that the walls between people's individual roles are robustly maintained. So I personally have no concerns about those matters. Does anyone else have any questions on item 10? If not, we'll move on to item 11. Item 10, by the way, was for information, and therefore we note the report. So item 11 is the forward work programme, which obviously will cover the work coming in front of us in the next couple of meetings. And I note, whilst the document is for noting, I note that the special meeting, which is now taking place on the 13th of November, is a meeting for which we need to make a decision on the audited statement of accounts, and therefore we will need to ensure that we are quorate. So members, please make every opportunity to attend. And if you're not going to be able to attend, please give your apologies as soon as possible. Does anyone have any questions on this particular agenda item?
Just one for me. Excuse me, Chair. Sorry, just to note, it says that all meetings at 10 a.m. unless otherwise stated, but the meeting on the 13th is actually at 2 p.m. So just in terms of that point, to making sure we're quorate, just in case members are referring to this work programme. Thank you.
Thank you. And I think the suggestion is that the committee members will have a pre-briefing, and in this instance for 30 minutes before the start of the meeting. So that would be at 1:30. It may be that that needs to be extended, but as it's currently set, it's 1:30 for the pre-briefing, and then 2 o'clock. And thanks to the Chief Financial Officer for reminding us of that. So the meeting itself will be at 2 o'clock. Any other points to raise? In which case we'll move on to urgent items. My understanding is that there are no urgent items. Is that still the case? Yes, thank you. So there are no further urgent items, in which case we will move to the second part of the meeting. And by agreement, we will move into private session, which means that I will need a proposer and a seconder that we prevent external access to the meeting. I can see two hands up, but I can't see in which order they are. So, Councillor Carpenter, if you
happy to propose, Chair.
Thank you. And seconder, Councillor Grimshaw. Thank you very much indeed.
Chair,
Thank you.
I'm happy to second, but I do have to go now. I'm afraid I've got a work meeting.
Thank you very much indeed, Councillor Grimshaw. Maybe you and I can have a conversation sometime in the new course, so I can properly welcome you to the work of the committee. So thank you very much indeed, and that means the recording is about to cease.